Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we are now just a day out from the NBA Finals getting started. We have already done an intensive, in-depth breakdown of this upcoming Pacers-Thunder series, but we had a little more time on our hands, so we figured if there's anything that we didn't cover that you guys still had questions about, we would give you the opportunity to ask those questions, and we will answer them today in a mailbag episode. So we've got a bunch of questions from you guys that we're going to get to today, and we're going to start with this one, which lots of you guys asked. Just a phenomenal question. Twist my arm and I'll answer it. But Logan, I'll let you answer it first. Where would Shai's season rank all time among guards with a dominant finals performance? And I say, let's limit this to one season per guard. So we're not ranking 91, 92, 93 MJ just because we'll have the same recurring names. What's your answer to this?
Well, I think first we can look at what he's accomplished tangibly and just compare it to other great guard seasons. So this season, SGA was the MVP of the league. He was the scoring champ, and the Thunder won 68 games. He had a dominant regular season. So let's break this down. And he's going to the finals. Who won MVP and went to the finals and was a guard? 57 Bob Cousy, 87 Magic Johnson, 91, 92, 96, 98 MJ, and 15 Steph Curry. All right. Who went to the finals, was MVP, and was the scoring champ? That's just 91, 92, 96, and 98 MJ. We put all of it together.
Well, and 2016 Steph.
And 2016, yeah. Because they didn't win the finals, I didn't
Yes.
include him. But he did go to the finals, so that is correct. Who did all this together? Who won MVP, won the finals, won the scoring title, and had 68 regular season wins? It's just 96 Michael Jordan. So, I mean, I think that's my answer, Carson. I think those are the two best guard seasons. Like, I look at other candidates. I think a peak Steph year could be considered if it was 2015, 2016, 22. But, like, when I just look at everything in totality all together, the regular season success, the accolades, the accomplishments, I mean, to me, it's really those two seasons, him and 96 MJ. Like, and the biggest thing to me, too, is that the Thunder were without Chet for so much of this season, and they didn't miss a beat, that this team was so successful without their other superstar. And so I think of other guys that I haven't mentioned name-wise that maybe we could consider. An 06 D-Wade, I think, is an iconic playoff run, but I think in totality it doesn't hold up. James Harden never had a playoffs and a regular season combined that met this, right? I don't know if you want to go even further back and we look at a Jerry West or an Oscar Robertson, but I just think SGA is separated, and I'm cool with putting it top three right now. Him and MJ in that top three by themselves. Steph would probably be the guy. Steph or Magic would probably be the next guy that I look to if we were to consider somebody else, but I'll put him behind MJ, and I'll leave it there, man. I think it could be number two.
Logan, every time that I think I'm as high on somebody as I can be, you find a way to just be a little bit higher, you cheeky bastard. So I do want to be clear. Ranking a season to me is a little bit different from just ranking a straight peak, in the sense that the historical significance of what you accomplish in that season does matter to me. Like, if you win a title with a great individual performance, that elevates the season a little bit. But sometimes you have a guy who's playing his best basketball ever, but the team circumstances around him don't allow for that sort of deep playoff run. Like, I would say Kobe Bryant, 2006, that's his peak. But based on the idea of what makes for a great season, I would probably say 2009 is the best season of his career. So I do think that there's a little bit of a balancing there. That being said, the thing that I am going to value most is the level that you are at. And it's very interesting to me that you chose 96 MJ, because I just think like MJ in all of the first three Pete seasons was clearly a better basketball player.
If I had to choose a best MJ, I'd probably either go 91 or 93 if I was just to choose like his apex. But when we're going, I don't know. Like you said, that's a dynamic that's hard to go between the single season and the peak. I think the best version of MJ was probably 91 or 93.
I would take 91 MJ as the greatest individual season ever, period. And I'm not really sure what could possibly be missing from that resume. Like, no, they didn't win 72 games in the regular season, but the team was absolutely dominant. They dropped 2 games in a title run, and that was the highest level that any basketball player has ever been at. I mean, the unbelievable scoring efficiency, giving you 31 a game, the 8.5 assists. He was a more dynamic defensive player at that time than he was for the
game in
second
the finals too.
11 assists a game in the finals, significantly more dominant rim pressure, just a better athlete when he's 27 years old compared to when he's 32 years old. So at the end of the day, like, accolades really don't mean anything to me, just because I think voters get stuff wrong all the time. And MVP is a nice thing to have, but there are certain MVP races that are weaker and stronger than others. So there are certain MVP seasons that are better than others, and there are certain non-MVP seasons that are better than MVP seasons. So I don't want to get caught up in that too much. I'm mostly thinking about the peak that you're at. But then if you do have a little cherry on top with a title run, I think that does add to the magnitude of the season a little bit. When you line up that historic individual level with that level of team success, that does do a little something extra for the season. So all that laid out there, here's Shai's resume for this year. In the regular season, he averaged 33, 5, and 6.5 on better than 6% above league average relative true shooting. So that is historic scoring production and efficiency. The only guards in NBA history to average 32 points per game on plus 6% relative true shooting are MJ, Harden, Steph, Dame, and now SGA. Then you also have historic impact from Shai, where the Thunder are 11 points per 100 possessions better with him on the court. He has a plus 17 on-court net rating. He has the 4th highest individual plus minus per game in a season in the play-by-play era. And 2 of the spots above him are Steph, and the other one is Draymond. So they're all coming from the 2016 and 2017 Warriors, the greatest teams, arguably, that we've ever seen. Shai is the next guy in that group. And then some of the specific numbers where when both Chet and J-Dub are off the court, he led the Thunder to a plus 27 net rating. He went a combined 48-7 when he played without either one of those guys. We've never seen anything like that. That level of historic dominance while missing key players for stretches that are that significant. So the regular season is absolutely up there as one of the greatest guard campaigns that we've ever seen. Then you get to the playoffs. Shai is averaging a rounded 36-7 on 58% true shooting. The only players to hit that volume on at least league average efficiency in a 10-plus game playoff run are LeBron, MJ, Harden, Oscar, and now SGA. So that's another club of 5 that he is in the scope of NBA history. And in the last 2 series, he's just been completely sensational. He's generating a level of playoff offense that only a handful of guards have ever been capable of producing, facing defenses that are aggressively loaded up on him and slanted towards him, and still he is picking them apart with his playmaking, and he is scoring with very, very impressive and historic volume and efficiency. So I think that he gets an A+ for the regular season, and I think that he gets a very high mark for the postseason as well. So if we are going to rank it, 91 MJ, I already mentioned, that's the GOAT season. 1987 Magic, I think, has to be a lock above this. He gave you 24, 6, and 12 on plus 6.5% relative true shooting. He led what remains a top 15 relative offense ever in the regular season, and led arguably the best playoff offense in NBA history. In fact, I would just say it is. Still, the 87 Lakers have the highest raw offensive rating we've ever seen from a champion, and that was almost 40 years ago.
I do want to ask, Carson, how do you gauge the supporting cast of both these guys when you're factoring that in? Because I think that Magic had a lot more offensive scoring help, and SGA's got this, all-time defense behind him.
Right.
So how do you strike that balance, I guess?
I'm pretty much just looking at the level I think that those 2 guys were at individually. And this is where, I don't want to get into too much of the team success stuff. And at the end of the day, you'd be picking nits, man, because we're talking about a Lakers team that won 65 games and dropped 3 games in a dominant title run versus an OKC team that won 68, and we'll see how many they end up dropping. But if we're talking about a dominant finals run from Shai, maybe they drop 5 games or 6 games in this title run. To me, the level that Magic was at as a tier 1 offensive player of all time, being the greatest playmaker we've ever seen, having his peak scoring volume of his career at that time as one of the most efficient scoring guards that we've ever seen, I just prefer him as an offensive engine. I think that he was the more impactful player. And so that's why I would take him over Shai. That's where, like, I do want to be clear. 90+% of this is just what is your flat out peak? But then there is the extra element of the historical significance of what you can accomplish. The other guy who I think basically has to be above Shai is 2016 Steph. Even though the postseason wasn't up to his standard, this is truly on the short list of best regular seasons ever. Like, makes a case for being the best regular season ever. He led the number 3 relative offense in NBA history, 73 wins, of course. His impact numbers are the best for this season that we've ever seen in the play-by-play era. Better than a +22 on-off differential, a +18 on-court net rating, one of the greatest scoring seasons ever, 30 points per game on +13% relative true shooting, with a rounded 7 assists per game. Like, the offensive impact of Steph Curry in 2016 is one that makes a case for being the greatest that we've ever seen. And I do still think the difference between that version of Steph and that level of offensive impact compared to Shai is noticeable. The unrivaled efficiency from a guard, the unrivaled gravity and off-ball impact in the history of this game. Just one of the most impactful players ever in terms of elevating his teammates while being one of the greatest scorers, period, that we've ever seen. And I understand the playoffs were not as emphatic, but he was also one game away from a ring against a significantly better team than any that Shai is going to face in this run. So that's where I don't want to be overly focused on, like, oh, this ended in a title, this didn't. I just think that 2016 Steph was a better player than Shai, and the regular season was that astronomically great that I have to still have that season above this.
I mean, it's a unanimous MVP, yeah?
Unanimous MVP.
I mean, also, not just a game, closing out 3 minutes. I mean, yeah. I don't mind that. I do think that if Shai gets a ring, though, it does matter to me, and why I would favor him over that Steph season.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Is there not another Steph season? Like, if the ring matters so much.
2022, I think, is a great shout as well. I mean, like, not the regular.
What about even 2017? Just because I think that 2017 Steph is clearly a better basketball player than Shai. I understand he's got the KD element and it was never in doubt. But that's just a top 5 offensive player at the least in NBA history.
Agree.
So that's why I figured I might as well just take Steph at his absolute best. And I do think that was 2016. But if you want 2017, that's fine with me.
It's a good shout. I don't talk about the 2017 or 2018 dubs because they're just...
I get it. It wasn't
too
fair.
Loaded. I don't mind you taking Steph. It's on my short list. Like, if you're going to pick one, you got to have it, man. Gotta have it.
But do you, when you are like the sole offensive engine for a top 3 relative offense in NBA history, and you have a +22 on-off swing, and you lead to the greatest regular season ever?
Before
I
KD,
just can't deny that.
Before KD, man, that's what people don't want to talk about. I'm on the fence about that season.
Okay. Well, I would definitely have those 3 above Shai. I think the conversation really starts after that. When you look at the next group of guard seasons, who puts together the combination of insane regular season and postseason that Shai has?
The next guy for me, I don't know if it was for you. My next would probably be Jerry.
Jerry is in my next group of 3. There's 3 dudes who I have here. So Jerry West, I would go with the 1966 season. You could just as easily go with the 1965 season when he averaged 40 a game in the playoffs and led them to the finals without Elgin Baylor, who got hurt in that playoff run. 66, they got a little bit closer to the title. Jerry was even a little bit more efficient. So I'm going to take this year. Regular season, he gave you 31, 7, and 6 on +8% relative true shooting. Led the league in true shooting percentage as a guard before the 3-point line existed. Like, you really can't overstate how remarkable an accomplishment that is. And then in the playoffs, 34, 6, and 6 on +9.5% relative true shooting, all just to lose in Game 7 of the finals to the greatest dynasty that we've ever seen, the Boston Celtics. That season, absolutely. I mean, he doesn't win MVP, but I don't care about that. I truly don't. I think that it's one of the greatest regular seasons and one of the greatest postseasons we've ever seen from a guard. Then I go Kobe 2009. And as I mentioned, I think that Kobe's absolute peak is in 2006, but you get bounced in the first round that year. So there is some balancing act here where you do value the deep team success in a playoff run. That's what you get in 2009 when he wins a title. Regular season, not as monumentally great as Shai's. 27, 5-5 on plus 2% relative true shooting, plus 11 on off swing. Great season. I mean, that Lakers team won 65 games. I just think Kobe was a guy whose impact became more pronounced in the playoffs because he could even increase his scoring volume and he could maintain or improve his efficiency in the postseason. That's exceedingly rare in the scope of NBA history. So the playoffs is where he gives you 35, 5.5 on plus 2% relative true shooting. So
I also think
Shai would have the regular season advantage for sure. I would give Kobe the slight postseason advantage up to this point if we're comparing these two seasons.
I was just going to add, too, I mean, Kobe's skill set was one that he can make any shot from anywhere on the court with any kind of defense. Also, I think it's important to contextualize that Kobe's doing this in a different era of basketball where games are routinely ending with, you know, in the 90s. It's just harder to score points back then with the spacing and how basketball was played. So I think his 30 to me is a little bit more impressive than Shai's 30.
Sure. And Kobe's playing more minutes, so if you adjust it per possession, I think that Kobe's scoring volume is still more impressive in the playoffs. But, like you said, even that adjustment doesn't account for just the offensive efficiency increase. So, I would agree. I think the Kobe postseason is more impressive. I think that the Shai regular season is more impressive. And then the last guy who I have in this tier, Oscar, 1964. 31, 10, and 11 on plus 9% relative true shooting. He does win MVP this year. And then in the playoffs, gives you 29, 9, and 8.5 on plus 8% relative true shooting. Loses in the divisional finals to the Celtics, but Oscar really never had a championship caliber team around him and still was automatically leading out number one offenses in basketball throughout a majority of his time in Cincinnati. So this is the group that I think he's in. And depending on how emphatic and impressive the postseason ends up being for him with this final series, I think Shai ends up somewhere in this 4th to 6th best guard season range. And there are certainly some other very worthy mentions. You have Luka last year. You have James Harden in 2019. You have Nash in 05 or 06. You have D-Wade, who I think you laid it out well, Logan. The weird thing with him is 2006, outstanding playoff run. He was not the player he would become by 2009, but that's a spot where he didn't have the team around him, so it's a first-round exit. I just can't put D-Wade's 2006 season on this level because the regular season was not there. And then the last guy I'd probably shout out is Chris Paul. You could go either 2008 or 2014, but I would take Shai over all of those seasons. Like, I don't think that there is anybody among that group who has this level of historic regular season and postseason. So I think that 4 to 6 range is where Shai is going to end up, and we'll see exactly where he lands. We have another question that is sort of on the flip side of this. Cole says, how would Shai's season rank all time among guards if he didn't have a dominant finals? Think 2015 Steph. Then I would say he probably ends up more in like that 6th spot. If it's like a holy shit, he's averaging 38 a game, then maybe he does surpass Kobe and ends up in that 4 spot.
I think if he has a dominant one, I think he could very well end up at 2 for me behind MJ and behind nobody else. If he has a down one, I think he's definitely behind Steph for me. I think he'd be behind Magic, be behind Kobe. He'd be in that range you're talking about. I think 5 to 6, but it's like, here's the thing that is kind of cracks me up about this question. What is like a non-dominant Shai finals look like? Like, that's what, still like 28 a night?
Yeah,
27,
28, 29 on 58% true shooting, something like that.
It's still going to be a really good series, I feel like, even if it's like not dominant by Shai standards.
Well, but I think that's what 2015 Steph is. I mean, that's one of the most underrated.
That's true.
final series and playoff runs ever. I tweeted about this yesterday.
Still
but
should
the
have won
guy-
Finals MVP, man. That's so ridiculous
Of
to me.
course, bro. Of course, bro. He's up there for the greatest offensive engine we've ever seen. The Warriors
like giving
don't sniff
Siakam
the finals. They
Eastern
don't have a
Conference
chance to win the
Finals MVP,
series.
man.
No, it's a hell of a lot worse than that, man. It's a hell of a lot worse than that. It's like if they had given Fred VanVleet Finals MVP in 2019 because they're like, hey, this guy overachieved by the most. Well, how about you acknowledge the guy who's the only reason that you're here?
True.
The only reason that you have an elite offense. The only reason that you're a 67-win team that can win the title. It's not Andre Iguodala, even though he had a great series. It's the guy who was demanding levels of attention and breaking defenses at a rate that nobody else has ever matched in the history of this game, at least certainly not in the way that he does it. Steph should have gotten Finals MVP. He averaged 28 in that playoff run on plus 7.5% relative true shooting, and people talk about it like, meh, it was underwhelming. Steph wasn't very good in that run. It's crazy.
Iggy held LeBron to 40 though, man.
Steph Curry, bro. Steph Curry. I can't have Shai above peak Steph Curry. I can't have Shai above peak Magic Johnson.
I get it.
I certainly
I
can't
get
have him above peak MJ. After that, it's open season. Anything is up for grabs. I do think that Shai is maybe one of the top 10 scorers in terms of a peak that we've seen. He's at the least on the fringes of that. I'd have to go through probably and look at each one. If we're just thinking guards, I would say that he's probably fifth. I think that MJ, Steph have to be above him. I think I probably go West in that 3 spot. And then Kobe versus Shai is very close. I think Shai has a higher efficiency ceiling. I think that Kobe is much better off ball. We had this conversation earlier this year, but I think that he's probably in that 5 spot among guards. So
SGA
one of the greatest offensive engines ever. Yeah, then I would go Harden in the 6th spot. Yeah. All right, enough talking about SGA. Enough glazing him. Let's just go opposite side of the spectrum. Doomsday scenario for the Thunder. Azazel asks, how deflating would a finals loss be for OKC? Is there historical precedent for a team this dominant being upset in the finals and then coming back and winning a championship? The only team that comes to mind is the 11 Heat. What say you, Logan?
Yeah, the Heat are a good shout. I mean, specifically being upset and then winning a championship. This wasn't an upset, but I mean, the 2015 Cavs did it, came back and won in 2016. The 2016 Dubs obviously upgrade, but I get what you're getting at. It's like a team that could be this similar of an iteration. I mean, I think this would be a really deflating finals loss, like just because of how dominant the regular season was, how everyone is framing this and talking about this finals as sort of a preview, like SGA and this team being on the cusp of being one of the greatest teams ever. It'd certainly be deflating, but it's like if the Thunder lost this finals, they'd still be my favorite tomorrow to win the championship next season.
Right.
It's like I kind of think regardless of what happens in this finals, I'm probably going to pick the Thunder to repeat again next year. It's like everything is there. The elite defense isn't going anywhere. SGA's not going anywhere. J-Dub's getting better. Chet's getting better. So, I think they're going to be around. The Heat are a good shout. I can't think of one like that would be this dramatic of an upset though. They came back and won. This would be shocking. I guess the 2011 Heat kind of is the only decent comp.
I mean, even that, the difference in betting odds, OKC is a minus 700 favorite. The Heat were minus 180 favorites. Like, I do think that Miami team in 2011 is overrated. And I understand the spectacle of it all and the big 3, but that team still had so much work to do in terms of adding competent to good role players.
The Mavericks had elite depth, though.
Absolutely. I'm just saying, like, the 2011 Heat were not some juggernaut team. They had the big 3. Mike Bibby was starting for them.
It was Bibby.
Shooting 28% from the field, averaging under 4 points per game. Joel Anthony was starting for them. Like, that team had a lot of work to do, bringing in, obviously, a Ray Allen as an elite role player, but Shane Battier. There were a number of key additions that they made in 2012 and 2013 that took them up a level. The furthest back you have to go to find a team that lost as this heavy a favorite was the Lakers in 2004. They were a minus 700 favorite. That's really the only time in modern history, at least, I think in recorded NBA history, that a favorite this heavy has lost. But there is another example of a super team failing on their first couple tries, actually, and then figuring it out and winning a title. And Logan, for that, we have to go back to the 1972 Lakers, who lost in 1969 to the Celtics with their big three of Wilt and Elgin and Jerry West. Then they lost in 1970 to the Knicks. They were favored in both of those series. It was very disappointing, but they still found a way to come back and have one of the greatest seasons ever in 1972. So is there a historical precedent? Yes, with that team. Yes, with the Heat coming back after 2011 and retooling and repeating. It would definitely be a huge disappointment if OKC were to lose, but like you said, Logan, I would absolutely expect them to come back as favorites next year, and they are going to get a ton of cracks at this, and they will win titles with this core, no doubt. Because like you said, they're just going to get better in terms of Chet, in terms of J-Dub, in terms of even Shai, and they have all the core pieces under control, at least through next year. This would not be the sort of thing that breaks the Thunder, and it's like, oh my God, they're never going to be the same. Like, they'll win titles. They'll win at least a title. I would actually guarantee it. I would bet my life on it. So there's your answer to that. Evan says, if the Pacers win the series, is this a greater run than the 2011 Mavs, both coached by Rick Carlisle, which is insanely impressive in its own right? People I've seen say no chance because Mavs played the Big Three Heat, but I believe people are heavily underrating this Thunder team in all-time talks simply because of nostalgia bias. I believe it's one of the greatest runs ever if they finish the job. The Hallie agendas I'll be pushing will be generational.
Oh, it will be here too, my friend.
Amen.
I don't think it's a greater run. And the only reason I say that is because of the totality of the run, even if they do beat Oklahoma City. I think it would be more impressive of an upset if they were to win, just because I do think this is a historically great team. I think that people are underrating this Thunder team in all-time talks. I don't think it will be that way shortly once if OKC wins the championship. But I don't want to underrate the totality of the Mavericks run, too. The Western Conference at this time was absolutely loaded. In the first round, they dispatched the 48-win Blazers in 6 games. That's a really good basketball team. They sweep the 57-win Lakers. I mean, that is Kobe and Powell.
That is your reigning back-to-back champ Lakers.
Yeah, swept them. Then they beat the 55-win Thunder in 5. Obviously, they're ascending with Russ, with KD in them, but that's a great team.
That's your NBA finalist next year.
Exactly. And then they beat the team that would go on. Obviously, like Carson mentioned earlier, it's not the exact iteration of the team that would win championships in 2012 and 2013 and then go to the finals in 2014, but they dispatched the Big Three Heat in 6 games. So it's super impressive. I think the finals victory, if the Pacers did it, would be more impressive to me, but I think that 2011 Mavericks run in totality is one of the most impressive ever. I mean, those are all great teams, and I love that's the first finals run that I ever really remember being tapped in on. I have such nostalgia for that 2011 team too, man. That was a really good basketball team, but I think that run in totality is a little bit more impressive.
I think that this OKC team is a good bit better than the 2011 Heat, and I laid out some of the reasons for that. And that's not to say the 2011 Heat weren't a great team. They were, and they disposed of the Celtics in that playoff run, and they manhandled the 62-win Bulls, took care of them in 5. So obviously, I mean, they had the Big Three. It's one of the most talented trios that we've ever seen, and that's when D. Wade was still like at his peak, and you're talking about a top 5 caliber player. That being said, if you look at the team by 2013, like LeBron was significantly improved. I think that Chris Bosh had become a more effective player for them at the 5 as a rim protector, finding his ability to stretch the floor a little bit more to the deep mid-range and even past the three-point line a little bit. And the role players were significantly better. So compared to this OKC team that's won 68 games, that has some of the best depth we've ever seen, one of the best defenses we've ever seen, with still an all-time great engine and a Big Three of their own. Not to say that they're like the Heat's Big Three, but the roster is so much better. The resume overall is much better. But to counter that, Logan, it's what you said. I mean, the path that Dallas had to go through in the Western Conference is up a level from what Indiana had to go through in the East. The Pacers did beat the 64-win Cavs in 5 games. And even with injuries, that is very impressive. So when you consider that series win, and if they were to beat the Thunder, that would be a more impressive finals upset to me. and you counterbalance that with Dallas just having to beat more damn good teams in basically every round of their run, but certainly in the last 3 rounds, I would say it ends up being like a similarly wildly impressive run. And it would be more of a true Cinderella run to me, just because I think that, like, the Mavs do get underrated from that year, and people look at the lack of, like, another all-star talent alongside Dirk, but it is one of the deepest teams we've ever seen. I mean, you still are getting elite defensive value and playmaking from Jason Kidd. You're getting really good two-way production still from Sean Marion. Tyson Chandler playing at such a high level defensively. The number of names, dude. Jason Terry, Peja Stojakovic,
J.J. Barea, Deshaun Stevenson.
Exactly,
bro. You're getting production from everybody. And that,
all of that with Caron Butler.
I was just about to say, dude, Caron Butler's not even healthy. Exactly, man.
So that's a team that won 57 games. That's a team that had been an automatic 55-plus win group around Dirk for a decade.
I was going to say, you listen to commentators talk about that team before they go on that run, too, and what's the thing that they always say? They have yet to break through. That was a team that everybody knew was fully capable of doing it. The hallmark of Dirk's teams up to that point was always, oh, they choke. You know, because they had that stank on them from losing the 06 finals, because they had that stank on them from being eliminated by the We Believe Warriors in 07. It's like, I do think that team gets a little bit that team was great every year under Dirk for a decade.
Absolutely. It was incredibly difficult to get to the finals out of the West in the 2000s, and they were always in the mix. I mean, just incredible consistency. So because of that, because they had an established all-time great like Dirk, I'm not saying that team wasn't doubted and that Dirk wasn't disrespected. All of that is true, but this Pacers team is at another level of like, okay, holy shit, they're in the finals. The Mavs had been there before with Dirk, so it's a little bit different. Along those lines, OG Lou asks, where would this Pacers team rank in terms of weird teams that have won a ship, if they win, of course?
I honestly think the 11 Mavericks are a good comp, and we keep talking about them, but the reason I think they're such a good comp is because they have their lead guy, and then it's a bunch of really good supporters. But I feel like that's a little bit disingenuous to Siakam, too, because Siakam really is a secondary star that I don't think Dirk had. I don't know, the names that I came up with outside of the 11 Mavs, the 04 Pistons, I think are a great shout just because they're such a unique winning team in basketball history. Obviously, the way they do it is super unique too. The fact that they're this elite defensive group, anchored by Ben Wallace, but they've got their offensive centerpiece and Chauncey Billups too. Like, they're just a super unique team.
Well, it's not a very good offense. It's incredibly rare to win the title as the number 18 offense in NBA history, but you can do it when you're one of the greatest defenses of all time, like they were.
And then beyond that, like in terms of weirdness, I think I kind of just look at like the 78 Bullets and the 79 Sonics just in terms of weirdos.
Yeah. I mean, that's immediately where my mind went. I have 3 70s teams at the top of my list just because that was the league at that time. In the mid to late 70s especially, you have so much parity. You have a different champion every year, basically. The 75 Warriors were a shock. They had only won 48 games that year. The Bullets were a 60-win team. They were one of the heavier title favorites to lose, and not only did they lose, they got swept. So that's a crazy run just when you think about the lack of, again, another real star around Rick Barry on that group. Definitely some good players on that team for sure. Young Jamal Wilkes and my beloved Clifford Ray and Butch Beard and whatnot, but definitely a weird champion. The 78 Bullets, as you mentioned, Logan, even though they had been to the finals with Wes Unseld in 71 and they had been there in 75, that was not a good regular season team. They only won 44 games. And then you have the 79 Sonics, who had just lost in the finals to the Bullets, but still only a 52-win team, obviously lacking a conventional superstar, good players, Gus Williams and Dennis Johnson and Jack Sikma. But the entire 70s era, you just have these teams who are winning titles and are not up to our usual standard for an NBA champion. The other modern one that pops out to me, I think the 2021 Bucks are quietly one of the weirdest champs that we've seen. And maybe people wouldn't put them in that tier just because of the Giannis factor and because they had been a dominant regular season team for a number of years. But I do think, like, the way that they won the title, the path that they went through, And the fact that I think that team just definitely had some pretty big flaws that maybe were overlooked because they won
I
the
mean, I
title, but
wonder.
not a dynamic offense, not great depth on that team. A lot of it was just Giannis pulling them through and then being a great team defense and facing a little bit of a lighter path where you get the very banged up Nets who take them 7, and then the Hawks are not your traditional conference finalist. That's a pretty weird team, especially when you look at the aftermath of that season, in my opinion.
That's a good shot. I mean, they're definitely unique in terms of their roster construction, but the only reason I would discount them is because of the all-time
Sure,
aspect of it. Like,
that's
I
fair.
was even maybe going to shout like the 23 Nuggets too, but it's like they've got Jokic, and it's like
That's
that
fair.
in of itself is just kind of a separator.
Very fair point. So I think that this Indiana team is probably in the top 5. And like, I want to be clear, they've been playing at this elite level for a long time. I say this constantly, but they have the second best record in the NBA since January 1st, only behind the Thunder. So this isn't a fluke. This isn't some black magic thing. They're just that good. That being said, it would still be crazy just when you consider like how we were looking at this Eastern Conference as being sort of the Celtics and Cavs show for the most part. The Pacers being as young as they are, the Pacers not having been this deep before. They made the conference finals last year, but that was their first deep playoff run at all with this core. Hallie being as underrated as he has been. Like, there's just a number of reasons that this is one of the more surprising runs to the finals that we've seen, and absolutely would be one of the more surprising title runs if they could go all the way. Let's answer on the other side of this question, Logan. 73 Jur asks, where does this OKC team rank in NBA history if they take care of the Pacers in 4 or 5?
I mean, I'm ready to call it one of the greatest in NBA history.
Okay.
I
What
think they're
exactly does that mean? Can I get a range out of you?
top 10 maybe ish. I'm kind of racking my brain right now. Like, I would really hesitate to put this OKC team over the Showtime Lakers. I would hesitate to put them over the 80s Celtics. I would hesitate to put them over the 82 76ers, the 90s Bulls. Some of these sort
Mm-hmm.
of legendary teams, because those are some of the greatest. Bill Russell, 60 Celtics, right? Like, they just did it year over year. But maybe the early 2000s Lakers. I'm thinking of exactly everybody that I would have over them just with like the Shaq thing. But
Sure.
I mean, this is one of the greatest defenses that we've ever seen, as we have harped on a million times this year. They're averaging over 16 stocks per game in these playoffs. They have a defensive rating of 104.7. Like, they are a historically great defense with one of the best offensive engines, I think, in NBA history, too. When you have that combination, you're all time special. So, just off the top of my head, conservatively, I'd say top 10.
So I think that they would be bordering top 10, definitely top 15. So if we break it down to individual seasons, I'll give you, this is a list I put together a couple years ago. But here
And
are
the
the top
Dubs.
10
I
that
didn't
I
even
have.
mention the Dubs. They, of
Right.
course, would be on there.
So 2017 Warriors, 96 Bulls, 86 Celtics, 67 76ers, 01 Lakers. That's the team that isn't as dominant in the regular season, but they drop one game in the playoffs despite having a ridiculous path through the Western Conference where they got to go up against the Kings, they got to go up against the Spurs, they got to go up against the Blazers. Just like insane how they obliterated those teams that are winning 55, 58 games. Then the 72 Lakers, the team I mentioned earlier, 69 wins and a dominant postseason. The 71 Bucks, absolute juggernaut, best offense in basketball, best defense in basketball, 66 wins. I believe the highest postseason point differential per game ever. 87 Lakers, that's the best Showtime team. 91 Bulls, that's probably the best offense that we ever saw from a Jordan Chicago team. 96 would be the best defense, but an insanely dynamic and dominant group. 83 Sixers, as you mentioned, 65 wins, and then they only drop one game in the postseason. That's the 10 that I have. And then you have the 97 Bulls, you have the 92 Bulls, you have the 89 Pistons, you have maybe the 64 Celtics, you have the 2018 Warriors, the 2014 Spurs. Those are like the top, what did I end up saying there? 17 teams. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that the Thunder would slot into sort of the back half of that range. I think that the regular season resume is like GOAT tier. The regular season resume is absolutely top 5 because we've never seen a team that dominant while sustaining the sort of injuries that they did to a Chet Holmgren. It's more the postseason, and as impressive as last series was, and it was an ass beating, the level of vulnerability that we saw from them in the Denver series and some of the offensive inconsistencies, that is something that you haven't seen from like certainly the top 5 teams where we're talking about they just mowed down everybody in the playoffs. That being said, if they sweep this Pacers team, then yes, I think that like top 10 becomes a real conversation.
It does if they sweep them. I was just going to say, they're already right here. This is the second year that they've had a crack at this.
Yeah.
Like they're already like, this is the first iteration of this team, and we're talking top 20 stamped, top 15 to top 10 potential status, depending on how this thing goes. It's like they're going to have a lot more cracks at this. They're going to have a lot more opportunities to put it all together and have one of these units that's much, much higher on this list, which is just any of those teams, Carson, like who – what is it, like the 87 Lakers? That's the youngest group. I guess the Dubs maybe. It's just crazy. Like none of those teams – I guess if we are, the 91 Bulls would have been the first iteration that they did build upon. But it's just so rare that you have a group that is this young that can actually feasibly get better that's already this great.
I've said it before, man. I'll say it again. They have an opportunity to become the greatest team of all time. Their resources are that insane. The greatness of the big three is that monumental. Chet's ceiling, the level that Shai is already at, the depth that they already have, and all the draft picks they have to build on that through the draft or packaging it for players. It is absolutely terrifying how great this team can be. And already we're talking about a team that, depending on how these finals go, we could view as a top 10 team ever. And I would say we will view as a top 15 team ever in totality. And I mentioned the offense against Denver being a little bit shaky and inconsistent and vulnerable. That being said, when you are arguably the greatest defense of the modern era and you win the transition margin and the turnover margin and all these things at a historic rate, like that can make up for not being one of those top tier offensive teams, even though they are a very good offense, because you're just that exceptional, even in the scope of all-time teams in these other categories. So everybody knows how I feel about the Thunder. I think that that's the range that we're looking at here, probably the very bottom of the top 10 into the top 15 if they have an impressive finals showing. I would say kind of just like, as long as they win the finals, I think that's the range that they'll end up in. Maybe if it goes 7, they go a tick lower, but I don't know, man. The regular season is so insane, and I think that the playoffs overall, quite impressive as well. We have a question from Socks, who says, I'm curious what your guys' opinion on this is. I feel like you're one of the most fair podcasts when it comes to debating all-time greats. Thank you, Socks. And linked is Josh Eberle's tweet. Give me a player who in their prime could have swapped with SGA, and the result of the Thunder being in the finals would still be the same. I saw some crazy responses to this.
I kind of think a lot of players and not like a lot, but I think a lot of legendary players you could choose. And the reason that I say this is because I think the foundation of Oklahoma City is so strong defensively that I think a lot of players could come in here. If it was a perimeter-oriented player like a Steph Curry, I think could come in here. Obviously, like legends like Michael Jordan or LeBron or somebody like that. But I was also thinking like, okay, what if we went away from a perimeter-oriented player? I think that Oklahoma City could be as dominant, say, if you put a Shaq in here, right? You would slot Chet in at the 4. Your starting guards would now become Caruso and Kason or something like that. Like, I just think that...
Should we keep it to guards just because I feel like it gets a little bit too weird if we go beyond that? Like, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I feel like you want somebody who is at least, like, similar archetype to Shai. Doesn't obviously have to be like the same kind
I still think it's got to be
but somebody who's like that primary perimeter creator.
I still think it's got to be a legendary guard, like
is there
Kobe,
anybody
a
who
D
we
Wade
didn't mention earlier who you think could do it?
I'll throw one guy out there.
Okay.
I'll throw 2 guys out there actually, and it doesn't work apples to apples because these guys are in no way close to. I'll throw out 3 actually. They're in no way close to Shai's impact as two-way guys, but I think with the infrastructure that Oklahoma City has around Shai, I think these guys could have done it. Steve Nash, I think that if you slotted him in here, could be a really good fit and could bring you that offensive firepower. Actually, four guys. I'm thinking of all kinds of guards right now. Chris Paul, I think, could slot in here at his prime and could do something like that. I think Damian Lillard could potentially step in here, like prime Dame could do it. And this is the guy that I'm on the fence about, but I think in the modern era, maybe an Allen Iverson even could come in here and give you the scoring punch in the offense that you need. And the reason I say it is just because, again, this defensive foundation is so high. I'm not saying that I take SGA's defensive prowess or two-way ability for granted, but you don't necessarily need all of it. It's much more important that you bring all of the offensive components. So I don't know how much further down than AI I'm going, but that's about where I'm drawing the line mentally right now.
Yeah, I would prefer to answer this question with like who could still win the title compared to who could make the finals. I know that's kind of a subtle line, but I think it's a little bit more interesting. AI is a tough one, man, because you do have to wonder, like, could he reach anything close to the scoring efficiency that you're getting from Shai?
Also,
it would certainly
would he be
a better offensive situation than what he was dealing with in Philly in his prime.
The thing I'm thinking about now, too, not to cut you off, but like with a Nash or an AI, are those guys the weak points that Indiana would be,
of course,
exploiting every single time down?
Of course they are. I do think that most of the guys you named, I agree that OKC could still win this title with them instead of Shai. AI is tough, man.
And I intentionally did not say James Harden.
Okay, well, I actually would say James Harden.
Or Russell Westbrook.
No, I do not think they could win the title with Russell Westbrook. I think he'd be too erratic offensively. Iverson, man, there's a lot of efficiency issues there. Not an elite playmaker, but when it comes to just carrying an offensive load and giving you a high enough floor there, that's really what he did. He could not give you the offensive floor that Shai does. I mean, he's just not the level of player that Shai is, but that's the thing. You don't have to be to win the title because 68 wins and losing 5 games in a playoff run, that's an all-time season. If you win 58 games and you win a couple of these series in 6 and 7, like, you still end up with a ring. So I guess that's what I would say. There are definitely a number of guys who I do think you could win the title with. Like the guys we talked about earlier, Luka, Harden, Nash, Wade, Chris Paul. I think that Damian Lillard is a good shout. I think that I do agree with that. Obviously, he would compromise your defense more, but would be a great offensive player. I think I'm leaning on the side of no with AI, just because I think he actually would hurt your defense and your offense enough compared to Shai. Like, I think he would instantly take you from being an all-time defense to just a very good defense, and he would take you from being a top 5 offense to maybe, like, I don't know, the 10th to 12th best offense, and that's a significant enough difference to say I don't think they would win the title.
They could lose against Denver or Minnesota with an AI.
Or Indiana. Yeah, I mean, you can't overstate the consistent elite efficiency and volume that you're getting from Shai. And I know that people love AI, but you just got to understand, man, like, Shai is 6'6", and he's one of the greatest shot makers we've ever seen, and he has one-of-one balance and body control and driving and finishing. It's just way fucking easier when you're that much bigger on both sides of the ball. It's nothing against AI, but we talk about pound for pound. Okay, that's not how the sport is actually played. If you're 6 inches taller, it's a huge advantage on both sides of the ball, and that's what Shai has. What I was building to with this is all these guys who we're talking about, I think you could win a title with instead of Shai, but not a single one of them outside of the top tier Michael Jordan, Steph Curry would make them better. In fact, I think that they would be less of an absolute juggernaut with any of these guys compared to what they are with Shai. Like, I just think Shai is such a perfect engine for this team. The insane on-ball scoring, the elite efficiency, the elite ability to protect the ball, to carry that sort of scoring load that they need from him with that hyper efficiency, and then also fit in as a positive defender on this all-time great defensive unit and not be targeted. Like, that makes him really the perfect lead guard for them. There are guys who would take the playmaking up a level, like a Luka, like a Harden, but they'd both be a huge step down defensively. Nash, Chris Paul, these guys would elevate a player like Chet Holmgren to a different level, in my opinion. Again, the playmaking impact would be so pronounced. But if OKC's shooting gets a little spotty, as it does from time to time, these guys, Nash, Chris Paul, are more reliant on the play finishing of those around them. They can't just like carry the insane scoring load that Shai can and put a Band-Aid on this whole offense, even though I think Nash is a better offensive player. But then the thing with him is he would be a huge defensive target. D Wade is probably the closest archetype to SGA of these guys, but he's not as effective a scorer versus loaded up paints as Shai is, even though he's one of the greatest drivers we've ever seen, because of the difference in mid-range shot making and even the ability to use the three with some volume and effectiveness. So all around, once we get beyond, again, that top tier of guards, I think that Shai, compared to Luka, Harden, Nash, Wade, Chris Paul, Dame, he is the best player and he is the best fit on this team of all of those guys. So yeah, they could win a title with the other ones, but they're best off with Shai out of this group. That's my take.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Again, the best of the best, like an MJ could come in here and be great too. The only thing I was going to add on AI, I do think AI would be more efficient in the modern NBA. I think with all the spacing, with his speed, he's still a special scorer, but there are glaring. He would be a major liability defensively.
Well, and also more efficient for Allen Iverson, who was consistently hovering like at or below league average efficiency, is very different from Shai being one of the most efficient guards ever. So AI improving his efficiency still doesn't mean he's getting very close to Shai levels of efficiency. So that's kind of where I come down on it. I think he'd just be a significant step down on both sides of the ball, probably more so defensively. Tartar Sauce asks kind of the flip side of this question. What all-time point guard could you replace Hallie with on Indiana that would make them the favorites or give them the best chance possible to beat OKC?
Favorites is tough. I feel like they need LeBron. And I don't even know if that would make them favorites. I don't think we can go as far down as we were just now. I mean, like Steph.
No, there's two guys.
Steph definitely is my shout. I think Magic's my next shout, and then
those are my two shouts.
I'm thinking about Steve Nash.
Yeah, that's a good one, but no, it's not far enough, I don't think. Just because of him being that exploitable defensively. But offensively, he'd be incredible. I mean, yeah, this team would reach meteoric heights with Nash running point offensively.
Steph's my number one pick.
Steph would be my number one, too. I think that you have to look at guys who are like the ultimate team elevators in one way or another. They have to be lethal in transition. And Magic, Steph, Nash, all these guys check those boxes in different ways. With Magic and Nash, it's being two of the three greatest passers that we've ever seen, the two greatest passing point guards, hyper-efficient scorers, but focused on manufacturing elite offense for their teammates, and guys who led to two of the greatest runs of team offense that we've ever seen. And then with Steph, it's his ability to elevate everybody else with just the overwhelming defensive attention. So if I had to choose one guy, I would say, just because we are playing the modern game where outside shooting is so key, I would take Steph. I still think OKC would be favored, though. I think Steph is the guy who would give you the best chance, but OKC would still have the edge. Just the defense being as historic as it is. I think that Indiana would still be struggling to get stops. I mean, their offense would go up a level, absolutely, because they have Steph Curry, but I don't think it would be enough to make them the favorite in that matchup. Ian asks, what does it take for Shai to surpass Jokic for best player in the world?
Honestly, I think a lot of things. I think Jokic would have to regress and get so much worse as a defender. I think he'd have to be like a cat-level defender. That's the way some people talk about Jokic. They treat Jokic like he's a cat-level defender, when I actually think Jokic sometimes can be a plus defender just with how active his hands are. And I kind of think he's underrated a little bit there. And people, just because of his build, and they see that Jokic is a little bit doughy, and I think they just look at him and they attribute a lot of these qualities to bigger big men that aren't actually true with Jokic. So regression defensively, I think Jokic, we would have to see regression of his 3-point jump shot and his touch like we did the down year after his MVP season last season. Um, I think he has to get older. I think we'd have to see like more regression of like Jokic in terms of mobility and uh, so maybe just natural aging. But like I honestly I don't feel like Jokic is the guy. I feel like Jokic may slowly age out of it, but then by then I think the next guy up is going to be Wemby, and that's going to be who Shai's battling. So, but I don't. That being said, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I kind of think this is Jokic's until Wemby takes over.
Interesting. It's definitely a very, very, very high bar because Jokic is at a top 8 peak of all time, in my opinion. I've called him the best offensive player ever. So if you're going to surpass that guy, you got to be doing top 8 all time peak kind of stuff, which is just ridiculous. So at least Shai would have to have an even better postseason next year. And the two things that I specifically look at are the three ball and the playmaking being a bit more consistent, because I think that Shai's playmaking as these playoffs have gone along has been very impressive. If you look at as that Denver series progressed, as the Minnesota series progressed after game one, I thought that he was making excellent decisions, but not the case in the Memphis series. Not necessarily the case early in game one of both of those series. And there was a little more inconsistency overall in the Denver series there. So that's one thing where Shai doesn't have to be making a ton of super complex reads. As I've said, he just has to leverage his insane all-time scoring threat into opportunities for his teammates and take advantage of those chances when they're there, because the defense is being so aggressive with him. And he's got to do that game after game, right? Where there's a little bit less of a load up. Okay, let me figure out what I need to be doing here. And then the three is just like something to keep defenses honest, something to add even more of a scoring ceiling for him, even more of an efficiency ceiling. And if he's going to take 5 threes a game, I want him making 37, 38% of them as opposed to 30% of them, which is where he's at in these playoffs right now. And he was below that earlier in the run. He's found his 3-point shot more. What I will say is, if he dominates in the finals this year, which I think he's capable of doing, if he gives you north of 35 points per game on crazy efficiency, I would hear an argument for Shai, depending on exactly what you value and how you want to build a team. Like, Jokic has an ability to elevate a team offense that is perhaps the greatest that we've ever seen. But Shai also provides you such a high offensive floor with his insane dominance as a scorer, his consistency as a scorer, dominating the rim, dominating the paint, dominating the mid-range. And then defensively, he is a very functional, positive piece. So, like, if you just want a guy who can carry that crazy scoring load with crazy efficiency, be one of the 15 or so most impactful offensive players we've ever seen, and then also be a positive defensively in a way that is just very easy to find a role for him, I could see the case for that. I also think that, like, in some ways, it's even harder to scheme for Shai when he's playing up to his ceiling. And what I mean by that is it requires a very special type of personnel, but there are ways to be hyper aggressive, doubling Jokic out of the post, where you can make it difficult to get him the ball, where you can load up the paint and you can take away some of those interior passes to teammates. It's just easier to double a post player at the end of the day. Whereas, like, when Shai is in his unstoppable mode as a scorer, there's no way to deal with that isn't ridiculously compromising to your defense, that isn't trapping him at half court, this crazy shit, that isn't shadowing him with a second defender at the nail, that isn't going to a zone that if his teammates are just making shots, you can pick apart. Like, I want to be clear. I think that Jokic is clearly the better offensive player. But do you see what I'm saying about Shai's ability to dictate from the perimeter that is so valuable? Like, I want to be clear, I'm not there. Even with the dominant final series, that's not going to be enough to move me quite yet when we're talking about Shai up against the GOAT offensive force in Jokic, who's been doing this for years. And I do think it's important to remember that, like, it's very easy to get swept up in the moment. There were people who were trying to argue Luka over Jokic last year. I thought that was ridiculous. Look at how that has aged. But it is also different because, like, I do think that Shai right now is better than Luka has ever been. So it's more of a conversation. It's something I'd be willing to hear out, potentially, where I wasn't there with Luka last year. I would still go with Jokic. And I would say it would take another year where realistically I think Shai would have to be better than Jokic in the postseason next year to move me, if we get to that point even.
I think you said it right. It really is the difference between initiating from the post and initiating from the perimeter for me with these two, and like how you can game plan and scheme. It's interesting to me the rosters around them still though too, because I still feel like just SGA's got so much better infrastructure around him and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But they're 1 and 2 for me. Would you have SGA over Giannis too? I know you had been debating that for a while too.
Yeah, I had SGA over Giannis when we ranked our guys in March. I'm going to stick with that. It's super close. I don't think that Giannis is far off from Jokic either. Like, I think we're talking about three dudes who are at that all-time, like, at least top 20, maybe top 15 peaks of all time. Shai is that great. And if you're not including him in those conversations, I think you're wrong. I also would not have him above Jokic, though. I still think you can't really overstate how crazy it is when your expectation for a player is 29, 12, and 10 on 65% true shooting. And his team is dominant with him and they fall apart without him. Like, that is the Jokic experience. And I'm still going to give that guy the nod as the best in the world. Mac asks, thoughts on how many minutes iHeart should be getting if he comes off the bench this series, and thoughts on Isaiah Joe minutes. He's been mid when playing meaningful minutes, but I don't know if they should bench him and kill confidence in their best shooter. We've already talked some about this iHeart dynamic, Logan, but what's your take on this?
Yeah, I'd give iHeart about 20 minutes a night, somewhere in there. Maybe get a little bit of overlap with the double big lineups, but I'm not overdoing it. Basically, I'm playing him in the non-Chet minutes. Maybe we get a look at the double big lineup and see its viability, if it's working or not. But we've talked about this a lot. I think Hartenstein could be the weak point that this Indiana team attacks out of pick and roll if he's in drop coverage, right, where I think Andrew Nembhard and Haliburton could be big. Haliburton, I think, with his pull-up three could get going against iHeart if he's out there on an island. So like 15 to 20, and again, it's a feel thing. I think it's a game-to-game thing, as most things are in basketball. And then Isaiah Joe, I would be giving Isaiah Joe stretches of quarters. I'm going to give him a 6-minute stretch in the second quarter. He hits a 3 or 2. All right, he can get some burn later in the game. If my shooters aren't making shots, Dort is 0 of 5. All right, Joe, let me see what you can get. Can you hit some shots? Like, it's more of a feel thing. I'll give him burn early in the game. I'll see if his shot's falling. If it is, I'll give him another stretch later in the game. If it's not, he rides the bench. And if my guys aren't hitting shots, I'm not hesitating to put Isaiah Joe in. Like, that is his special A1 trait, the fact that he can shoot the cover off the ball. So don't leave him on the bench. Don't make him ride the pine the entire series. I'm going to give him some burn. But, again, for both of these guys, I think we're giving them trial runs. Definitely Joe more than iHeart, though. I think iHeart could be really, really effective off the bench in minutes against a Thomas Bryant or against a Tony Bradley. I really think he could be disruptive in those minutes.
Totally agree. I think that he can dominate the glass. I think that his playmaking in non-Shai minutes can be so valuable as your center, but I would probably only play him about 16 minutes a game. I just really want to minimize the double big looks. I've talked about this a lot, but I think that you want to be as fast and as switchable as possible defensively against this Indiana offense, and you want to give them 0 targets. Going with Chet at the 5 is how you do that. Defensively, offensively, I think you want to maximize your shooting and perimeter skill around Shai, anticipating them, loading up on him, going to zone some. That's what Chet at the 5 gives you. Chet's also been way more productive at the 5, so this is a series in which I want to see them basically with one big on the floor at all times. But like you said, I mean, 20 minutes a game. Isaiah Hartenstein is just a really good player. So, like, if Chet is struggling, if Chet is in foul trouble, if he's out of rhythm offensively, I'd be fine with them going with iHeart a little bit more. But Chet is the guy who they should lean on for most of those minutes at the 5, and I just think Chet is going to have a killer series. I'm expecting 20 points per game out of him. I'm expecting really good efficiency. I think this is a great matchup for him where he can weaponize his speed offensively, and he'll be at the 5, which is where he's most effective offensively by far. And I'm really excited to see what he does. For Isaiah Joe, I don't think that he should play a ton. And the biggest reason for that is I just want to keep Indiana from having any defensive targets. And I think that Isaiah Joe is the one guy really who can be that as a perimeter player. So I see the value. He can provide an offensive spark. He's the best three-point shooter on the team. Him setting ghost screens for Shai, it's been like unstoppable offense all year. It's Isaiah Joe ghost screens and Max Strus ghost screens. Those are the two guys who have just been money with that all year. But I would probably go to Aaron Wiggins minutes first, because that's another guy who can give you an offensive spark. He's not the level of shooter that Joe is, but he's got a little more as a driver. He can shoot the three at a high level. And then defensively, obviously not a level of plus like a number of the other guys here, but just a little bit bigger, a little bit better, and more formidable defensively. So that's probably who I would turn to before Joe. I'm not anticipating a ton of minutes from him in this series. By the way, we're now into more like tactical questions here. We did a lot of the historical stuff and ranking stuff to kick off the episode because we didn't get into any of that in our series preview. We did touch on a lot of tactical and matchup stuff in our series preview, but you guys still had some more questions, so that's what we'll get into here. Shai Gorgeous says, do you anticipate the Pacers playing majority zone like the Nuggets did with how many attackable defenders they have?
It's a good question, and what I would say is I think they should employ a lot of different defensive coverages. I think the thing more so than anything else is I just don't want Oklahoma City getting comfortable. Carson and I talk about this all the time, but it's really important just to throw different looks at teams. I'm throwing a lot of different looks. I don't want them to get comfortable with anything. I'm talking about in the pick and roll. Sometimes we'll throw doubles. Sometimes we'll blitz. I think you should just give them a bunch of different looks where they have to make different reads every time. Because if you're giving them the same look, they get comfortable. They make the same read. You're getting killed over and over again. I'm just going to try a lot of different stuff. I think zone is really smart. I think we've seen this OKC offense struggle at times to beat the zone and to settle for some three-pointers if you can execute it at a high level. So I would turn to that for a bit too, but I'm also, more importantly, I just think I'm loading up on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that is probably my number one goal if I'm the Indiana defense. I think Oklahoma City supporting cast should obliterate them if they sell out on Shai. I think they should hit a lot of threes. I think J-Dub and Chet should get going. But to me, that is a much, much better strategy than trying to guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on an island. Because Shai is just going to serve you bucket after bucket, and that just can't happen. So sell out on Shai, employ different coverages, try the zone out a little bit. But Shai is my number one priority if I'm the Indiana defense.
My take on teams going zone against OKC all year has been it's smart to mix in, but it's not just going to be some miraculous answer, right? It's not some cure-all and solution to OKC's offense. In fact, in the regular season, they were a little bit more efficient against zone than they were against man. And in the playoffs, we did see Denver gives them some fits early in that series with the zone, which I thought that they ran very effectively. But since Game 5 of that Denver series, the Thunder have averaged 1.11 points per possession versus zone. That's an excellent number. If you're above a point per possession in half-court offense, you're doing very well for yourself. And there's really just two boxes that they have to check. Shai has to make the right reads, and he has to be effective playmaking against the zone. And the guys around him have to knock down shots. Now, they have to be smart with their spacing. That's a big part of it. They have to make those baseline cuts. And they just have to make open catch and shoot threes when they get them because they'll be there. They have to be willing to make the extra pass if they draw a closeout and that opens up somebody else against the zone. But those shots are always going to be there, man. It's just inevitable. There's going to be open space against a zone. You have to attack it. You have to get the ball to the right spots, and you got to make the shots when you get them. But Shai's been so good as a passer as these playoffs have gone on, and the shooting around him. Last series, they're 38% from three. If the Thunder shoot at the level that they should, the zone really won't be that effective. Also, Indiana has hardly played any zone in these playoffs. So even though they have 5 days to get ready for this series, that's an adjustment. This is something that I think Chris Finch talked about a little bit with Minnesota. NBA defenses, for the most part, just don't play a lot of zone. So it's a different thing, and it can end up being more complicated for you as a defense to execute in the NBA Finals when you don't have a ton of reps with it, even though Indiana played some zone in the regular season, and it can maybe give you a little bit more trouble than it can an OKC team that actually has now seen a fair bit of zone. And just some of the directing traffic that Shai was doing in the Minnesota series against the zone, where it's a 3-2, so he's overloading the top. He's moving guys to the right spot, and he knows exactly where he wants to get. I think we'll probably see some zone, definitely not as much as in the Denver series, just because I think OKC is going to be a good bit more effective against it. But like you said, Logan, I think mixing looks is always a good idea, and throwing the zone in there selectively is a good idea, in my opinion. You have no idea how good Scott McDeasy was, asks, how are you feeling about Kaysen after how he's looked in the playoffs so far? Is there any way OKC can keep him long term? And how good could he be if he leaves OKC? Logan, I know how you feel about Kaysen Wallace. That's your boy right there. That's your dog.
A Kaysen Wallace question on the mailbag? I'm getting all hot and bothered in here, man.
Yeah, I don't blame
I could write a book about Kaysen Wallace.
I dream about him every night.
I think Kaysen's a beast. I'm feeling great about him. He hasn't shot the ball extremely well, but another thing to me about Kaysen, that wherever he went, I love guys who have great basketball instincts, and Kaysen knows where to be positioning-wise, offensively and defensively. He is a point of attack hound. He is strong. He is long. He's feisty. He fights. And for the most part, you know, I called Kaysen, I think last year or early this year, like one of the best kept secrets for like OKC or something. And I don't think he's necessarily a secret, but I do think people tend to underestimate Kaysen's offensive game. And because of his offensive responsibilities in this system, I think he gets underrated a little bit. You know, this guy is traditionally used as a spot-up shooter and just a floor spacer. And he's a good shooter, don't get me wrong, even though he hasn't shot well in these playoffs. Kaysen's a really good passer and a really good playmaker. I really like how he operates out of the pick and roll. I think he's got more chops inside the arc than his numbers would suggest. And that's why I loved him. He's a really good off-ball supporting piece for this team right now as a defender and a shooter. But in a different situation, I think Kaysen Wallace would be the starting point guard on a lot of basketball teams, and a damn good one at that. I don't know about them keeping him long-term. The only reason I say that is because you got to pay Dub, you got to pay Chet. Those are priorities 2 and 3 to you, behind keeping SGA and holding on to him. There's a lot of other young talent here, right? They re-signed Wiggins and they re-signed Joe to really good deals. So if they can get him on a value contract and he's willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to stay here and to win games and to do his job, I'd like that for him. But I also think Kaysen could go get a bag somewhere else and be a really, really good player for some. I think Kaysen's a great winning basketball player, and I think he'd work anywhere. But it's like the rich getting richer, man. It's a spoiled little riches in OKC, man. It is disgusting that they have this many great basketball players.
It is insane. I love Kaysen. I think that he's great. You know what I was just thinking about, man? Obviously, he and Derek Lively effectively got traded for each other, right? They swapped the picks. You think about the hype that Derek Lively got last year, and I saw some people even downplaying Kaysen Wallace, like, oh my God, that's who you got, and you let Derek Lively go. First of all, Derek Lively got wildly overrated after last year because
he's going to be spacing the floor and shooting threes. And...
yeah, he's actually Giannis. He's actually Giannis with the 3-ball. But Kaysen was always getting underrated in those conversations, and genuinely, like, who would you rather have long term?
He's better,
man? I think it's very close.
I mean,
Lively is good. I want to be clear, but ESPN ranked him as like the number 60-something player in the NBA this year, and people were talking about him as like, oh, he's gonna be an all-star thing, and I was just like, settle down.
You also have to realize how good Luka Doncic made Derek Lively look offensively. It's like, dude, I still remember doing prospect tape on Lively, and I couldn't. And props to Lively, because Lively came so far along in the coordination department from where he was as a prospect. At Duke, could not finish, had very little touch, and was extremely foul prone. And I think he had a game that scaled better to the NBA in terms of what he could do as a lob threat and an athlete and a rim protector. But I think Kaysen's way more skilled. I think he's an elite point of attack defender. I think he's an all defense caliber there. I mean,
Yeah,
I, he averaged what, 2 steals per game this year? I may be exaggerating that number a little bit. He was
close to
really
it.
high.
He's got some of the best hands in the league. I thought he should have been third team all defense.
Yeah,
If that thing were to
I
exist.
did put him on my all defense second team, even though Dort probably deserved it over him. Kaysen, I've loved, so I wanted to give him his flowers, but I'd rather have Kaysen. I think he would start in a lot of other situations. And again, a guy like Kaysen, the reason I like him so much is because he can work on ball, but he also works off ball. It's specifically the malleability and versatility of his skill set that he can do both. I can't say enough good things about him.
I love the guy. Maybe I'm not as high on his offensive potential as you are on like some of the on-ball stuff. I don't view him as a particularly good pick and roll ball handler, but I think that he is like an exceptional cutting guard. I think that he has phenomenal feel. I mean, even you look at like his offensive rebounding numbers in these playoffs, the guy's averaging over an offensive rebound a game, which is kind of impressive for a 6'4" guard playing the minutes that he is. And then he can shoot. He's a really good decision maker. He's just like the ultimate role player winning guard. And to have that from a guy in his second year, it really is exceptional to be that ready to contribute in that way, that young. I don't think it's impossible that they keep him long term. It's probably unlikely, but also like there are certain contracts here that OKC is going to get off of. Like they're not going to, in my opinion, take the team option for Hartenstein. And so I think he'll be gone after next year. And then part of the beauty of the Joe and Wiggins contracts is, yes, they're good dollar values, especially the Wiggins deal, but those are also easy contracts to potentially get off of for draft capital back or just very maneuverable contracts. Caruso, God, I hope that they keep him, but his contract is going to be like $20 million a year. So we'll see if they have the opportunity to pay Case and what I think he's going to deserve and demand, which is probably like $20 million a year in terms of an extension, which isn't crazy if they end up thinking, okay, we want to keep some of these other guys on even cheaper deals like a Joe or a Wiggins or whatever, who are not as good as Kaysen, but they're cheaper. And they're like, okay, we'll just trust our ability to draft and develop because we have so many draft picks. I could see that, but I could also see a world in which they do make keeping him a priority. Just an insane defensive player, an insane winning player. So how good could he be if he leaves? Like, that's where maybe I'm not the highest on like, oh, Kaysen Wallace is going to turn into some 16, 17 point per game scorer at another spot. I think this is an ideal role for him where he can be so focused on the defensive end and doing the winning things. But I think that he is excellent in that role. And so I really have nothing but good things to say about him too. D-Ray says, which Pacer other than Haliburton and Siakam do you think has to step up the most in order for Indy to have the best chance at beating OKC?
Miles Turner and Nembhard. We did talk about this a little bit in our preview episode too. Turner specifically, I think, has to step up defensively in terms of protecting the rim, rebounding, and I think he just needs to shoot really well. I don't know what the hell was going on with Miles Turner those last two games. He looked
missing every three long.
Missed every three. He looked generally discombobulated and like unprepared. I don't know. I'm a pretty big Miles Turner guy. That was strange. So I think he has to get going on both ends of the basketball, but also Nembhard too. I think Nembhard really needs to get going as a scorer, specifically in the mid-range. I think that's where he's going to have the opportunity to do most of his damage. Out of pick and roll, attacking closeouts. Nembhard, to me, has to have a big offensive series where he's up near 15 to 20 a night efficiently and giving you really good defense. I mean, we're talking about them to best chance to beat OKC. For me, it's definitely Turner and Nembhard. But, I mean, beyond that, too, the next guys I would mention, too, Nesmith and Mathurin, I also think, need to have solid series, especially Mathurin more offensively, Nesmith more defensively. But that's who I'd single out.
It's Nembhard for me. He's going to be guarding either Shai or J-Dub, probably some combination of the two. So important, difficult defensive assignments. And then offensively, he is one of those guys who has potentially the on-ball juice, the quickness, the tough shot making to actually create some decent offense for himself against this OKC team, which I think is essential because there's just going to be a number of possessions that break down. OKC shutting down all your actions. Somebody has to go out there and make a play happen. And Nembhard is the guy who potentially could do that. So I think he's vitally important, but also hasn't been the epitome of offensive consistency. Obviously really struggled offensively for a 3-game stretch in that Knicks series. Doesn't get a ton of easy offense. A lot of it is from the mid-range where he's great, but if you live on that, you're going to have some ups and downs, but I think that he is the guy who I look at being really important on both sides of the ball. Indiana State Nembhard, speaking of Nembhard, this series, I have an unshakable fear that Nesmith fouls himself out of guarding Shai. If and when that happens, I assume Nembhard will have to guard SGA. I have no doubts about his ability to guard him, but how do the rest of the matchups work out in that case? Love y'all's work. Thank you, Indiana State Nembhard. Logan, what do you say?
Yeah, I think I have no doubts about his ability to guard him. Is just kind of getting me. I kind of do, brother. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That is optimistic for sure.
I mean,
I think that he just means like among their options. I would.
Yeah,
presume.
yeah. I mean, I trust Nembhard to move his feet, but it's just SGA is so damn good with his offhand, whatever he's using to create that space. I think we saw that in the regular season. I think he's going to move Nembhard around because he's so strong. Other matchups, though, I think I'm putting Haliburton on Dort or Caruso, I guess, or whoever else is out there. I'm sticking Siakam on J-Dub. I think I'm sticking Turner on Chet. And
you're putting Siakam on J-Dub?
I mean, who are you putting on Dub?
Oh, are we saying if Nesmith is out of the game or if we're just moving Nesmith off of SGA?
I was under
think
the impression
Nesmith and
Nesmith
Nembhard should
fouled out.
be guarding. Okay. Well, then I guess it depends on who's on the floor. But I would rather have a Ben Shepherd on J-Dub. I'd rather have a guard on him. Yeah, I don't know about Siakam out there. Maybe with his length.
Are you putting Siakam on Dort?
No, I think that I would put Hallie on Dort, and then I would have Siakam on
the other guy.
The other guard is, I guess, Caruso. It doesn't really matter at that point. It's kind of interchangeable.
Yeah. I don't know. J-Dub's strong. I kind of wanted a strong guy on Dub. But you would rather have like a guy who can defend those mid-range jumpers.
I just don't really like Siakam guarding guards. I think they're a little too shifty, a little too quick for him. J-Dub isn't a guy who blows by you a ton necessarily, but he is shifty. He can shift gears and he can get space for his mid-range like that. He can get a little bit of a step on you and get to those floaters and finishes in the lane. I would rather have Siakam maybe in a role where he can do a little bit more roaming. I think he's more effective guarding bigger wings or even bringing a little secondary rim protection. So I would want a true guard guarding J-Dub. Or when he gets healthy again, Jarris Walker, who's going to miss the first couple games. But I think he's an interesting guy to throw at both of the OKC guards when he's available again.
Yeah, I hope his ankle's good to go. That was really nasty the other night.
Yeah. Forgot about that when we did our finals preview. I didn't mention that he was going to miss the first couple games.
Completely slipped my mind. He did roll his ankle hard under the rim.
Yeah.
I'm hoping Jarris can be out there, but, I mean, he's probably only going to give you, like, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a night anyway if he's healthy and available, because I don't think Carlisle's going to play him a ton. I think he should give him some burn and see how he looks, but...
You know what actually could be interesting? I'm thinking about what to do with Siakam. Put him on Chet maybe, man.
I've thought about that too.
Because...
I don't think Chet's going to be able to drive on him.
Exactly. That's my concern with Miles Turner, just him not being quick enough with Chet in space. If you can put Turner
and then Turner's in that roamer role.
Exactly, and he's doing a little bit more roaming, I think that could be an interesting configuration.
I'm going to go with that. That's my answer.
Yeah, in terms of guarding Shai, good luck.
Go to church.
Up. Yeah, it's a good point about Nesmith fouling because last 2 postseasons, he's at 3.9 fouls per game. So he does play his way into foul trouble more than you would like. I do think he's the best option. I think he's better than Nembhard. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's longer. Nembhard just got cooked by Shai this regular season. He had 27 points on 70 possessions in that matchup on 70% true shooting. So again, you say you have no doubts about his ability to guard him. I definitely would have some concerns about that. But the reality is, I think both those guys get a crack at him. I think Ben Shepherd will get a crack at him. I want to see Jarris Walker get some possessions when he's healthy. I think Shai is going to fry everybody, but you might as well throw some different bodies at him and take some chances because it's going to be a team effort to try to slow him down at all. It definitely takes a village. Zach says, what are your expectations for OKC's shooting this series? Does Indiana offer more opportunities to guys like Wiggins and Joe to score and make things happen than Minnesota did?
I mean, like I said earlier, I'm selling out on SGA, and so I do think that's going to produce a lot of open opportunities for Oklahoma City. I don't know. That's one of the biggest variables of this series. I wish I could confidently give you an answer. I think they're way more well equipped to shoot better than they did against Dallas last season because I thought that was a complete and utter meltdown. They just have other guys that I trust more. I think Dort has improved as a shooter since last season. I think Caruso is much more reliable. They've got Joe. They've got Wiggins. So I think the quality of shots that these guys are going to be getting is going to be very, very high. I can't really say with any confidence if they're going to shoot well. They were great. They've just been so inconsistent. They looked way better last series, though. So I expect them more so to carry a little bit of that momentum from last series against Minnesota into this one. I'll put it this way. I think the supporting cast and the secondary stars will look closer to what they did against Minnesota than they did against Denver.
Agreed. Nothing to add. Myler Curry asks, if the rosters were completely even, would you bet on Daigneault or Carlisle? This is an interesting question.
I really like this question, too. I'd actually say Daigneault. I think Daigneault is a brilliant X's and O's guys. I love his rotations, and I, for the most part, have thought every game plan that he has brought in every series of his career has been really solid. Even the one they lost last year against Dallas, I thought they implemented the best strategy and executed. I really, really like Daigneault, man. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league, and I also. It's kind of hard to say if the rosters are even because I kind of have a hard time separating Daigneault from this core. And the reason that I mean is just that this team and him have grown together. They have this sort of, I feel like, unspoken camaraderie and chemistry that, not that the Pacers don't with Carlisle, but they've just been together for so long. But I really like Daigneault as a coach. I think both of these guys are excellent, but I marginally prefer Mark.
They're both elite coaches. I would probably give the edge to Carlisle. We've just seen him succeed at such a high level in multiple very different spots. I think that he runs the most impressive offense in basketball right now. Like, I give so much credit to Hallie and his ability to make elite decisions and enhance his teammates so much. But also, I just think a lot of the actions that you're getting out of Indiana, their entire offensive identity, yeah, it's all interrelated with Hallie, but straight up the stuff that they're running is impressive too. And Daigneault has just been a little more rigid in regards to certain adjustments. I think that he is a very good tactical coach. You mentioned the strategies in each series and how you've liked them. His refusal to bench Josh Giddey until too deep in the playoffs last year was bad. And I would like to see him just go away from the double big starting lineup at this point. So if he does that in game one of this series, that's a point for Daigneault. If he doesn't, that's kind of a big point against him just because I think it's so clear that Chet at the 5 is the best look. So I think that they're both great. I think that they're both phenomenal at not just the tactics, but getting the most out of their guys. I mean, these are two of the most high effort, high motor teams. I think that they both have these interesting challenges of like figuring out rotations where you have a lot of depth and you're picking different guys for different matchups and different nights. And I think for the most part, they both do quite a good job of it. Carlisle's just a little bit more proven in terms of the track record, in my opinion.
Only thing I'd also say that the other thing that I haven't liked from Daigneault is his inability to pull shooters when they're not shooting well. Like at some moments in these, like Dort, if he's clanging, I just think you have so many good defenders. Just put the guy out there that's going to make shots. But I think these are both two great coaches.
I would agree. I think that that's a good point as well. MacGyver says, as a Nuggets fan, I desperately want the prevailing thought to be that Thunder Nuggets was the real finals, so to speak. Do you feel that's actually the case? If not, where do you think Denver ranks relative to the field based on this postseason?
Shout out Richard Dean Anderson, man. I've seen every episode of MacGyver, bro. What a banger show.
How does it compare to Mr. Ed?
Way more entertaining than Mr. Ed, bro. MacGyver, bro, he would be like...
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a bunch of episodes right now, dude. He'd be trapped in a closet, bro, like R. Kelly. He'd be stuck.
Well, that's maybe
And
not a
then,
comparison that he'd be thrilled with.
bam, he's out. Dude, he would get into anything, and then he would take like a paper clip, a piece of gum, and
Yeah.
a bottle cap, and boom, he has created some device that he can assassinate you with, man.
And this is a documentary.
Bro, MacGyver's a banger, bro. They got like 8 seasons of this show, Carson. It's crazy, man. You got to check it out.
Did you ever see the MacGruber movie with Will Forte, the spoof?
Unfortunately, I have.
No, I haven't seen it. It's not good.
Not that good. Shout out him though, man. Will Forte is funny.
Yes.
I think that Denver was probably the second or third best healthy contender to Oklahoma City. Yeah, I kind of hate calling it the real finals, but I do think they were the best chance with what played out to knock off Oklahoma City. I still feel like, and Carson, you tell me what you think about this. I mean, I still feel like healthy Boston was probably a better matchup, but considering that they got hurt, I think Indiana was the second best team out east. I think Cleveland, they had some injury issues too. They had some issues that they really struggled to overcome. The Knicks, even though I know the Knicks got to the Eastern Conference Finals, Knicks fans can be mad at me for saying this. I feel like the Knicks were always kind of fake, and the Pacers were really able to exploit their shortcomings. So I'd say Denver is probably second or third to me in terms of being the best team in the field. And I think it's really impressive that they got to 7 games against this team, considering how we've seen other teams fare against OKC. Like, Denver, I think, is throwing the best punch at Oklahoma City.
I definitely can't say that it was the real finals. And the reason for that is, like, it is kind of disrespectful if you say that to the teams who actually did advance further. So if you are going to say that, you better be damn sure of it. Like, the only time I can think of a second round series that legitimately was the real finals was 2007 Suns Spurs, where like those were just clearly the 2 best teams in basketball. They were going to destroy whoever came out of the East. Either one of them was going to take care of the Jazz in the next round. We're not looking at that sort of clearing with the Nuggets versus Minnesota or Indiana, even if we think that Denver's better than those teams, which I don't know that they are. I think too, Indiana probably is better than Denver.
What's weird, though, is, I mean, even if Denver had beaten Oklahoma City, I probably would have taken Minnesota to beat Denver just because they've had Denver's numbers. So it's kind of hard to say. It's a lot of modern basketball is just matchup dependent.
For sure. So I can't do the real finals thing. I would say Denver was the 3rd most impressive team in these playoffs behind the 2 finalists. They beat a really good Clippers team, which is probably underrated. And then they pushed the Thunder 7, and they did that with injured and struggling MPJ. So even though OKC was clearly the better team, right, they won a couple blowouts, like Denver probably got closer than anybody else is going to get. So I see where the question is coming from. And in terms of where they stand, I do think that Denver has a real opportunity to solidify themselves as number 2 out west this offseason. If they're aggressive, which it doesn't sound like they're going to be, unfortunately, but if you could turn MPJ into a nice 2-way wing, a little bit more depth, maybe, even if you could get into the Kevin Durant trade market, then perhaps you could become number 1 in the West, and you could surpass OKC, which is exceedingly difficult to do. But I don't know, man. I get that that's a huge long shot, but KD, I would just be so in on that market. But it was a really impressive postseason from Denver. They defended above their regular season level. They did it even with MPJ with the AC sprain, even with Aaron Gordon obviously getting hurt in Game 6 of that second round series. And they had a tough draw, tough first round, the toughest second round they could have had. And I thought that they performed quite well overall. Yafet asks, who in the league has the best bet at guarding Shai? I have Herb. Who do you have, Logan?
That's a good shout. I wrote down a couple names. First, I want to shout out Jalen Clark from Minnesota in the regular season. That dude held Shai to 5 of 17 shooting when he was the primary matchup. That's just ridiculous. And Clark, I think, was all defense UCLA, veteran at UCLA. I mean, defensive player of the year, I believe, in the Pac-12. I mean, Clark's a stud. Amen Thompson, Shai kind of got his own with Amen, but I still think Amen is a good matchup. I think Herb's a good shout. And then I think Derek Jones Jr. and Dylan Brooks are good shouts too. The issue with guarding Shai is, like, you would think that you would want a really long defender like a Jaden McDaniels or something like that, or one of those kind of guys who can move their feet, can stay with them. and you do, but you also need somebody who's really strong, and so you need this rare combination of foot speed, of length, but you also need it to be a strong defender. And it's hard to have all of that because, I mean, he had his way with Jaden McDaniels in their
Yeah.
series against Minnesota. So I don't think anybody can really, really like lock up SGA, but I
Right.
mean, I think a men would probably be my pick. But shout out Jalen Clark, too, man. He defended the hell out of Shai.
Yeah, Amen is a really good shout. I would honestly go with him and Herb. Those would be my top two choices. What Herb did in the playoffs last year, what Herb did in the regular season, like, that was wildly impressive. It was the most that we've seen Shai struggle against an individual defender. It's not a big sample size, but last year, Shai only scored 22 points on 208 possessions when he was guarded by Herb on 8 of 25 shooting. So it's not just the inefficient scoring, it's how few scoring opportunities he's getting in that matchup. Pretty insane. Herb is an incredible defender. That sort of length, 6'8", with 7-foot wingspan, being able to move like he can. He's phenomenal, and I'm excited to see him healthy again. But, of course, Amen, just in my opinion, the best perimeter defender in basketball right now. He's an excellent shout as well, and made a couple of unbelievable recovery plays on Shai this year where you're just like, nobody else is blocking that shot on the planet. He's a one-of-one freak. Leo says, do you think every team that has made the finals are championship quality teams? For example, do you think the 2018 Cavs could have won against a different matchup?
I think any team that makes the finals could have won in a hypothetical against a different matchup. Like,
Ooh, really? I don't agree.
I mean,
the
like
2007 Cavs could have won the title.
I'm just saying, like, if we're doing like
The 2023 Heat could have won the title.
well, hey, hold your horses. Hold your horses.
I'm just asking.
I think the Pacers are a championship caliber team. I don't think
I
the
agree.
2023 Heat or the 2020 Heat were championship caliber teams. Like,
Ooh, the 2020 Heat.
yeah, I mean,
I would say that was a championship caliber team.
I don't think every team that
Dragic,
like the
if Dragic had
2000
stayed healthy.
the 2009 Orlando Magic, right? The 2007 Cleveland Cavaliers.
You're saying the 2009 Magic weren't championship caliber?
I'm saying, like, certain teams you look at, dude, and it's like the 02
Yeah,
and
certain
03
teams.
the 02 and 03 New Jersey Nets, right? It's like,
Sure.
no, just because you made the finals does not mean that you're a championship contending team. But I don't know. I think when we're doing like, like the 2018 Cavs, it's like, I don't know. When we get into hypotheticals like that, I think it's kind of silly because it's like, I don't know. But no, I don't think every team that makes the championship is inherently a championship quality team. I think sometimes you get some lucky breaks. All that being said, I do think the 2024 Pacers are a very championship quality team. They are in a different tier to me than like the 25, excuse me, the 23 Heat.
Yes. I agree. So I actually have a list of teams in the last 3 decades to make the finals who were not championship caliber, in my opinion. I think this is a really interesting question. And my answer is no. Not every team that makes the finals is championship quality. 2023 Heat, absolutely not. Crazy run, lots of outlier shooting, just not a very talented team, and they got their asses handed to them accordingly by Denver. I don't think the 2018 Cavs were championship caliber. I think it's incredible what LeBron did with that team, but it's one of the weakest rosters we've ever seen make it to the finals. The 2007 Cavs, just nothing about that team was championship caliber. Even LeBron wasn't the level that he would have to get to put that team in those conversations, and the roster around him was not impressive. The 2002 Nets, probably the 2001 Sixers, definitely the 1999 Knicks. All of these teams, no coincidence, come out of the East, which has been the weaker conference for several decades. The 2009 Magic, I don't agree. That was
the only
an
reason I say
amazing
that is just
defense
because
and a beautiful offense, and they beat the 62-win Celtics and then the 66-win Cavs en route to the finals.
Yeah, bro. I mean, that offense is kind of comically limited compared to like almost any other offense you look at, bro.
No, it's not.
Because they can shoot the pill.
Dude, beautiful ball movement, lots of shooting, lots of high IQ players in that offense.
I mean, their lead perimeter guy, shout out, man. Their lead perimeter guy is Jameer Nelson, bro.
Well, Jameer Nelson got hurt, so maybe if Jameer Nelson had stayed healthy, they would have won the freaking
Look,
title.
and I like Jameer Nelson as much as the next guy, bro. That Orlando team's one of the first I ever remember consuming. But
you ate them. Jermaine Nelson was an all-star that season, by the way.
I know.
So.
I remember. I mean, and like, shout out Shard, shout out Hidu, shout out Redick. It's like, all right, they got shooters.
All I'm hearing is ahead of their time shooters and offensive weapons.
It's a cool team. I don't think that offense was championship caliber.
We can agree to disagree on that. I think it was. I do think that there are other teams whose offenses were not championship caliber, that's for sure, such as the 02 Nets. I would say even the 01 Sixers, their offense was just so limited around AI. But there definitely are teams who make the finals and aren't actually good enough to win it all. But this year's Pacers team is not one of them. Like, you have teams who are championship caliber, but it would be a real surprise if they won. That's where I think this year's Pacers come in. That's where I think last year's Mavs are in that tier, although I think this Pacers team is better, but in the same tier. So it's an interesting question. Kobe says, if the Pacers win the title this year, does Hallie become the franchise GOAT? Does Siakam move above Reggie or at least above Paul George? Does Miles Turner become the third best Pacer in franchise history?
Okay. You can disagree. I think you probably will with this one. I'm cool with Hallie jumping Reggie for the top spot. I mean,
no!
Look, dude, Reggie spent his whole career there. If he brings a chip,
18
it's like
years! And he was better than Hallie is right now. He peaked higher and played 18 years for the franchise.
And he did something that Reggie couldn't do. He did something that Reggie couldn't do.
This dude is actually about to make me crash out.
Look, nobody else is going to leapfrog. Look, here's my thing. Nobody else is going to leapfrog Reggie. Nobody else is going to leapfrog Paul. Siakam and Turner become bona fide franchise legends. But if Haliburton brings them a chip, Carson, what more do you want? They're going to build a statue.
How about he leads a decade of top 8 offenses? How about he leads them not just to the finals once, but deep into the playoffs a number of times? How about he's one of the most impactful offensive players ever? By the way, I love Hallie. Reggie just gets so underrated.
Shout out Reg.
One of the greatest playoff risers ever. One of the most efficient scorers ever. A top 2 off-ball player in NBA history. And he gave you 18
Hallie would be the GOAT.
years.
Hallie would be the GOAT.
Listen, man, if Hallie gives him another decade, absolutely. Right now, is Tyrese Haliburton better than peak Reggie Miller?
No.
Okay. And he's given you a fifth of the longevity. So 1 ring compared to a finals
Reggie
appearance,
didn't get him a ring.
Is that all that matters in this beautiful game, Logan?
No, I mean, shit. Look, shout out Reggie, man. Reggie gave him moments. Hallie would get him a ring.
I would honestly be okay with you putting Hallie above anybody other than Reggie, just because of the significance of the achievement. Not Reggie Miller, man. Not 2 decades.
Yeah, and then Danny Granger would be 4, all right?
Whoa. I'd like to see your list. Kobe, shout out for the question, but not even close on any of these.
Carson's about to crash out.
No, I just think none of these are close to being true. Reggie, we already talked about. Siakam, frankly, wouldn't really even be in conversations with Jermaine O'Neal, Rick Smits, Roger Brown, George McGinnis, Mel Daniels. Maybe we can put him in Billy Knight talks.
George McGinnis.
I don't know, man. He's been there a year and a half. I do think that it matters how much time you put in with a franchise, not to mention that, most of those guys who I just mentioned, he hasn't peaked higher than regardless.
Tony Bradley's my GOAT, bro. Tony Bradley's my Pacers GOAT, bro.
Shout out Tony Bradley. Miles Turner, I'm going to be honest, trying to work his way into Dale Davis talks. And, he's about there. He's about there. If we're just talking about a pretty good big who hung around for a decade, he's not working his way into top 3 for the franchise ever conversation. So, Kobe, I'm going to presume that you're a younger individual. I would just say let's respect our history. Let's not be overly biased towards this moment. Let's not be overly biased towards the idea of a ring. A ring does not automatically mean that every individual player is suddenly way better than you thought they were before. It means a great team came together and they accomplished something incredible, but it doesn't just launch everybody involved into a different stratosphere. I think that's one of the really problematic things we do with basketball discourse, is act like that is the case.
Johnny Furphy would be a top 15 Pacer of all time.
The top 15 are going to be the 15 guys on the roster right now.
Yes, Ben Shepherd's going to be right ahead of him.
Shout out. Robbie asked a similar question. Again, we're getting it from both sides. Does a dominant performance by Shai...
What?
You need to settle down. I heard it when I said it, but come on. It's a family program. Does a dominant performance by Shai make him the greatest OKC Thunder of all time? Furthermore, does Shai crack the top 50, 40, 30 after that?
So, I mean, if we're looking at Thunder, I mean, I would have a really hard time putting him above KD. Are we just looking at Thunder, or do you want to include Sonics too, just their franchise?
I think Thunder. I think we're talking Thunder here.
Just looking at Thunder, I'd have a hard time putting him above KD. I don't think that highly of Russell Westbrook, so I wouldn't have a problem putting him above Russell Westbrook, just because I think Shai is better.
Yeah, he's above Russ for me.
When we're talking about the greatest players of all time, though, I could see Shai with a ring, us talking about him 30 to 25, maybe somewhere in there. That's where I think, and I think I would. I think I might put Shai top 25.
Wow. It's so hard. I don't want to rank a player all time
he's
when
young.
He's 26.
It's really, it's hard. I don't know. I'm thinking about guys that I would have, like, it's, like, do I want Shai or Kawhi? Because Kawhi's body of work is so much better, even though he's injured. Shai's 3-year run is a really high freaking peak. That's what I can tell you right now, is that it is a historically great peak.
But at this point, like, you're basically ranking him like he's Bill Walton, because you can't give him anything more than the 7 years he's given you, and only 3 of them are at a superstar level, and even the last 2 years have been up a level from 2023. Like, he's improved every year, but I don't even want to rank a player all time when he's 26 years old, especially when he's a little bit of a late bloomer like Shai, where he's only been at this level for 3 years. I think it's more fair game when you're just talking about rankings within the franchise. I would have him above Russ. Simply put, he is on the verge of accomplishing something that Russ could not do, and that is be the best player on a championship team. And there's a difference between something not being possible, right? Saying that you couldn't do it and that you didn't do it. There are a number of players in NBA history who didn't win a championship as the best guy, but I do believe were capable of doing it if a couple of things had broken differently and if they had had certain pieces around them at certain times. Russ is not one of those guys, just too fundamentally flawed. As an offensive number one, too wildly inefficient and erratic. So Shai is just leaps and bounds above him as a player right now, and that's the reason I would have him higher. KD, I do think, was just slightly better at his peak than Shai is now. It's close. Shai does some special stuff with his ability to be one of the greatest on-ball scorers we've ever seen, to protect the ball at such a monumentally high level, but KD's efficiency peak was even higher. His scoring peak was even higher. His off-ball value was significantly greater. And the totality of what he did, I mean, he won you 10 playoff series. He was top 2 in MVP voting 4 times. He had 4 scoring titles. Like, I just couldn't put Shai above him quite yet. The title is a huge accomplishment. I think that it would make this the best season by an individual in OKC history. And even then, again, we're getting into this sort of weird dynamic where, like, I would say KD 2014 was a better individual basketball player than Shai is right now, but the title elevates the season a little bit. But it puts him on a strong trajectory to be OKC's GOAT. I just couldn't have him yet above the totality of what KD did as a Thunder, which I know Thunder fans will probably be pissed about because I think they have a lot more love for Shai than KD. But KD was just incredible at his best. And Shai is too, but just KD's a little bit more incredible. Last question from Aaron Wiggins GOAT. What are your guys' thoughts on the low projected ratings for this series? Personally, I can't sleep at night. It's the only thing on my mind coming into this series, and I don't know how the league will survive. Good point. Logan, your take.
Don't care. Still don't care. Still don't care. I think if you love basketball, if you're passionate about it, you're going to watch it. Don't go on Twitter. Everyone on Twitter is a hater, and their heart is filled with hate and rage, and for some reason they feel the need to take it out on other passersby on the app and just trash something. Like, dude, half the trolls that you see on Twitter shitting on basketball don't like basketball. That's the funny part. So why am I listening to them? Block them out. Lock in on the playoffs. You know what? Actually, just block haters out. Do what you want to do. Do what makes you happy. Yeah. And if watching these NBA Finals is going to make you happy, then why the hell do you care what Joe Blow on Twitter has to say?
Amen.
That's my
Couldn't
take.
agree more. We've been pretty adamant about this throughout the year. I know that this is a satirical question from Aaron Wiggins GOAT. I think it's one of the strangest and stupidest things that NBA fans give a single fuck about the ratings of the league. It has zero bearing on my enjoyment of a product, how many people are watching it. Truly could not be less of a factor for me. I care about the quality of the basketball that's being played. I think that we are in for an incredibly exciting contrast in style between these two teams. I think we're getting the two teams that have been the best in basketball for an extended stretch. We're getting two exciting, young, ascending franchises led by very different, lovable superstars, both of whom I enjoy watching so much and I think have been underrated and underappreciated and overhated on in their own ways. The rating stuff is stupid. It's something that's unique to basketball. It just perplexes me, the culture that there is with negativity in basketball media. And you talk about it just being the Twitter trolls, Logan, and absolutely that's part of it. But then you also have the biggest figures in sports media going out there and giving credence to these ideas and broadcasting them for a national audience. And it's just crazy. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was listening to Andy Roddick's tennis podcast, Served. Fantastic. And he's interviewing Andre Agassi, one of the greats. And it's just such a great interview. And it's so insightful about Andre's personal life and his thought process as a tennis player. And then they go through like every great player who he faced, basically spanning multiple generations. And Andre gives like this concise, perfect 2-minute breakdown of what made every single one of these rivals great and challenging and the specific tactics of the matchup and their unique strengths, what they brought to the table. And Roddick is bringing his own insights throughout. And I was just like, why can't we have this in basketball with former players? Like, we deserve this. And you know what? Maybe Mind the Game is that. Because Mind the Game, I think, is doing some great stuff. But then you see Gilbert Arenas come out here and saying just horrible things about Karl Anthony Towns today.
It's also,
and it's
too,
just
it's like,
on, this is what we get. This is a majority of what the ex-players are giving us. It's
like Cheryl Swoops shitting on WNBA and Caitlin Clark, man. It's just like, why do we got to do this, man?
And maybe, like, you think, oh, this is inherent. People are jealous. Like, they never want to be passed up. But I'm telling you, this isn't a thing in other sports. Like, I'm watching awesome tennis media from former players. It is a perplexing, uniquely basketball thing, and it sucks. And that's only kind of related to your question, but I was just thinking about it related to negativity in basketball media overall. And we're off that, bro. We are on that positive media kick. Let's talk about the beauty of the game, because the game is beautiful and the finals are here, baby. Let's freaking go. We will be live tomorrow night reacting to game 1 of this series. I cannot wait for it. So if you guys want to join us, as always, you can do so immediately post-game, or you can watch the show back after the fact. All of our content is on YouTube, all of our full episodes, all of our video essays and video breakdowns. You can listen to all of the episodes across all audio platforms, and you can follow us across social media, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh, and you can join our Discord if you want. That is linked at the link tree across our social media bios. Also, we've been making the rounds. We've been doing a little media tour. I was on the Topic Thunder podcast yesterday. We were both on Player's Choice today. So if you want even more Nerd Sesh Finals preview content, you can go ahead and check all of that out. I cannot wait for these finals, Logan, and I cannot wait for all of you to enjoy them with us. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.